Stand by for mode 1 Charlie 17. Mark, mode 1 Charlie.
And the flight dynamics officer says we look good on all sources, right on the trajectory. Crew will experience maximum G-forces of about 4 Gs at shutdown. Coming up on first stage shutdown. I think we saw them all from here.
Roger, Jack. The thrust is going, all 5 up there. Running good. Roger, 17, here, go.
Greetings and welcome. My name is Steve Muhammad, and you're tuned in to Knowledge for Life's Knowledge Cypher, Black Mental Health Matters. And today we're going to be talking to a very special guest, but we'll introduce him. We're going to be discussing PTSD. We're going to also discuss the history of Dr. Martin Luther King's bout with severe depression and suicidal thoughts when he was a young man. And then we're going to open up the floor. And if you would like to be a part of this program, we're going to give out a number where you can call in and be part of the program by asking a question or making a brief comment. But we're going to get right on into the program. I'm going to first introduce Dr. Swift, and I'll bring her right on, and then we'll allow each panelist to give you more information about themselves. And so, Dr. Swift.
Yes.
Greetings.
Greetings and good evening to all the family out there. Thank you for tuning in. For those of you who are tuned in, looking forward to our discussion this evening. My name is Dr. Monique Swift. I'm out of New Jersey, and I am a psychologist. I have a small private practice in New Jersey, and the bulk of my work is consultations around the issue of trauma. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll introduce Sister Nicole Muhammad. Pushing the wrong button. There we go. Greetings, Sister Nicole. Assalamu alaikum. And assalamu alaikum to you, Sister Dr. Swift.
Wa alaikum salam.
Okay, greetings. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. I'm Sister Nicole Muhammad, and I am basically Dianetics Auditor. I started on my journey in auditing in 2011 when I actually went in to get myself audited. And of course, you know, auditing is a therapy, so it's something that you should always continue, not just start one time and then stop and think that you never need it again. The mind is something that is very interesting to study. So I have now made myself, or shall I say, I like to think that Master Farah Muhammad has put it into me because I am a person who just loves knowledge. So I'm now detouring and trying to actually become a master of understanding the science of the mind and how auditing and therapy, how all of that, because this is something that Minister Farrakhan introduced to us. So it is of great value. So I am now trying to become a master of it right now. So I'm excited to be among everybody. My background comes from education. I've been there for about 17 years. Now I'm at the college level, not dealing with the students in the classroom. But this, what I'm trying to understand about auditing, I think that it can be a great help with our people, especially in mental health issues. So I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so we're glad to have both of you here. And we're going to bring in the veteran, Dr. Melvin. Greetings, Dr. Melvin.
Greetings and good afternoon, good evening, I should say, to everyone. Thank you for tuning in and joining us as we are now veterans in this environment.
That's right.
Coming in. So I am Dr. Melvin Hinton. I am a licensed clinical psychologist with pretty extensive experience in the criminal justice system, working in forensics and correctional environments. Looking forward to the discussion this evening with our special guest, excellent guest, and the discussions not only about suicide and depression, but also, you know, how we are going to kind of move forward, as today is obviously a significant day in this country, but, you know, how we can be impactful in a positive way moving forward. So thank you all for that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And we'll bring on Dr. McClure, who will introduce our guest. And Dr. McClure, I'll bring you on. Greetings, Dr. McClure.
Greetings and good evening to all the wonderful folks on the panel. Just, you know, a little bit about myself. Over the last 11 years, I've been consulting with the military, Army, Navy, Air Force, and currently with the Marines, which brings me to this topic today of post-traumatic stress. Now, just because this is framed and our guest has a military background, we know that post-traumatic stress is not relegated specifically in the military context. We're just hearing a bit of that tonight, but we know that this exists within our communities, within our families, the school system, so that the topic is clearly going to be much more broad in nature. So what brings me into this conversation is working with active duty and veterans around post-traumatic stress, and really a lot of the ancillary issues connected to their family life, wife, children, support systems, those that are in place or not in place. And that's really what I'm interested in, is looking at the support systems and making sure people understand what's going on with someone if they've been dealing with post-traumatic stress.
I don't know why that popped up.
So in saying that, I'd like to introduce our guest this evening. First of all, I must admit he is my fraternity brother of Phi Beta Sigma Incorporated. So Sergeant First Class Antoine Delagar, U.S. Army, was born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida. Father and disabled military veteran with 3 combat tours. After suffering a stroke while parachuting from a military aircraft at the age of 30, his life changed forever. So at age 33, still in search of a new normal, Antoine found his voice through writing, specifically through the publication of his first body of work entitled The Day I Lost My Wings. I really encourage you to take a look at this book, some of the folks out there. When I first read through it, I literally kind of tore through the pages. It was that interesting, as he really laid his personal life bare and open, and kind of shows a pathway for many other folks that are along the same path of what paths they might be able to follow as they're constantly trying to understand what's happened to them over the years, wherever the source of that trauma happened to come from. So, Mr. Delagar, Antoine, one of the first questions I'm going to start with is, I'm just looking at your dedication page, and once again, I already said I'm interested in support systems. Can you tell me a little bit about the folks that you have on your dedication page? Why did you choose them, and how are they a part of your support system?
Well, thank you for having me, everyone. It's an honor to be among you guys. You guys are the epitome of Black excellence to me, having gone through the system and dealt with psychiatrists and different doctors. But to answer your question, I chose my wife, my daughter, my father, my aunt, and my grandmother really to because they all played a particular role in how I got through what I got through. My wife and daughter, from the moment the accident happened and I was paralyzed on my right side, my wife, she jumped right in. She didn't waste a beat. You know, after the tears dried, she realized that she had to get to work, and she needed to encourage me because I was still in a portion of my own head where I just felt like my life was over. And so, you know, she jumped in, she did what she had to do to help me get better, to encourage me daily. My daughter was here at the house, and when I got home, when I was able to come home, she was there. Anything I asked, anything I needed, she was right by my side. Didn't want to let me have to want or need for anything. I mentioned my father because I don't think I've met a more manly man in my life. I don't think I've met a more devoted man. He was devoted to his family, and he was devoted to me as a father. Even when I didn't appreciate it, he was devoted to me. You're getting that teenage years, around 13, 14, you start wanting to smell yourself. And so I was smelling myself, and I didn't want to listen to him about a lot of things. But fortunately, I came to my senses, and I had some good years with him before he left. And so to me, it was worthy of him being notified, being recognized in that book, because I had also lost him the year before. So it made it even more intensified to me. Then I talk about my aunt. My aunt, his baby sister, we lost her about 6 months prior to him. And so she was the one that inspired me in arts, music, writing, just expressing myself through the pen. And so she's always encouraged me through that. And so I felt like I owed it to her because she didn't get to see me do it, so I just felt like she was worthy of the recognition. And then my grandmother, because she was the one that initially told me I needed to write a book. Once she heard my story, she said, "Hey, Antoine, she calls me Twan. She said, "Hey, Twan, people need to hear this. People in the neighborhood, people that don't go to the doctor, people that don't have the funds or the resources, or know that they have the resources. They need to hear what you have to say. It could be encouraging." And it took me, from the day she told me that, it took me 3 years to write the book. But I got it done.
Okay. So it seems like in life and death, you have family supports that have been guiding you along the way. And it also seems like they've been preparing you along the way, even before you knew you would meet this day that happened.
Yes, sir.
Can you start us off and kind of guide us into, where do you want to start in this book, The Day I Lost My Wings? The drive to actually begin writing this, and what were some of the key pieces for you? As you guide us through that pathway, we can find a few questions along the way to begin asking you.
Okay, yeah. So the drive to write the book, of course, again, it came from my grandmother. But then I started getting my own. Once I actually sat down that third year, when I sat down and just was like, "Hey, you know what? I got to get this done." What allowed me to finish, when I actually started from that first dedication page, because before the third year, the furthest I had gotten is the cover and the topics that I wanted to talk about. But from the day I started writing that dedication page to the day I finished it, it was about 35 to 40 days that I took to write it. And so in that time period, what guided me was the fact that I had to look at what I felt God had done in my life, how I felt like I had been blessed to recover from something that was so traumatic. From having the stroke, it was a regular day. I'm jumping out of an airplane with my fellow service members, and having a stroke midair and didn't even know it. To being paralyzed, to actually paralyzed on my right side. My speech, my face drooping, speech all slurred. Sounded, I sounded like a 4-year-old. I have a stutter now that I never had. And so going through all of those phases of just recovery, learning how to walk again, how to walk on my own without a cane or some type of, they had the little walker they gave me, you kind of fold it out and keep chugging along. I had one of those. And so getting past that, graduating from a wheelchair to, walking on my own. And so just getting through those phases. And then the crazy thing about it was that wasn't where it stopped. Like, it was like, okay, it was like one thing after the other, life just seemed like I felt like I was on a high. I had just got promoted to E7, which, in the military. And so, I felt like I was on a high, like I'm doing good. My wife and I celebrating 10 years of marriage at that time. And, we coming back from a trip that she's always wanted, a place she wanted to go. And as soon as I get back, the next month, I'm laid up in the bed, paralyzed, and trying to figure out what's next. I found out I'm getting promoted, and now I may not. I'm thinking, oh, my career is over. I won't be able to walk my daughter down the aisle. I won't be able to enjoy certain things. Would I even be able to have children? All these things just kept going through my head as I was laying there. And so what I found is, once I calmed down, was that, hey, whatever it is, God had your way. Like, I can't do anything from here. I can be upset. I can, be mad at the world, but it's not going to change anything. Where do I go from here? And so that got me through the first, I say, probably 15 days of it. And then once I was up and walking again, and kind of moving around on my own, the next thing was that afterwards of my voice, my speech still sounding very, to me, elementary, and being educated and everything like that. I just felt like I was going back instead of forward. And so I was starting all over again. And so that was another mental thing I had to get past. I didn't know this, but as soon as you have a stroke, one of the things that they prescribed me right off the bat was medication for depression and anxiety. I didn't even know, I didn't know that's what was going on, but the doctors at Duke were like, hey, I was like, well, why are you guys giving me this? And they said, hey, usually after this, you're going to go through some forms of depression and anxiety. And sure enough, I did. And so, they prescribed me meds to get me, kind of level me out. And so at that point, I just kind of realized that, hey, you know what? I can either fight this. I can either become addicted to the drugs, because on the jump, I actually broke my left ankle, because I hit the ground. I couldn't control myself. So I broke my left ankle, messed up my knee. So I had to have surgery. And so they had me on pain meds. Percocets didn't work, so they had me on a very strong drug called Dianetics. And, you mix Dianetics with some of the other drugs they was giving me. I didn't find out until I got to the VA down in Tampa that a lot of the drugs they gave me here on Fort Bragg and at Duke, because they were being mixed together, because they were giving me sleeping meds as well. Well, Dianetics calms you down. The sleep med, Trazodone, I think it was, that one is like a tranquilizer. And so when I got to doggone the VA, Tampa, James A. Haley VA, Veterans Hospital down in Tampa, Florida, they literally told me, they said, hey, we got to take all these from you because you could literally die in your sleep. Like, you can get so comfortable that you just stop breathing. And I had already been taking it for about 3, maybe 4 months at that time. So, and that's not a fault. I'm not blaming anybody, but to me, that was just another example of how God kept me. When medicine could have failed me, God kept me. And so, I tried to stay motivated through that, keep pushing through it. I had moments, of course, I still have moments where I find myself frustrated because I felt like I could be further. I could have been, further in my career. I had career goals, things I wanted to accomplish. But, then I'm reminded as I hold my newborn, my new baby, that we didn't think we could have naturally. I hold my baby. I'm realizing that, my plan for myself may not have been what God had planned for me. And so with that, taking that into consideration, I've been able to kind of just reel myself back in Sometimes that work, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, I know we're on a mental health podcast. I mean, a presentation and everything. But I'll be honest with you. Sometimes that self-talk don't work for me. You know, sometimes I had to go. Sometimes I went to a bottle and started drinking. And you know, going through having to go through alcohol. You know, basically a rehab for alcohol to get myself back on pace. And mainly because I didn't want to be dependent on anything.
Can I
I didn't want to be dependent. Go ahead.
can I ask you before you took that, before you jumped out the plane,
Yes, sir.
did you know that you had, that health condition?
Not at all. So I will honestly tell you this. What happened 2 weeks, about 2 to 3 weeks prior, I went to the hospital after a long rush march with my fellow soldiers, and basically I had lost vision in my right eye. No, I'm sorry, I lost vision in my left eye. I couldn't see out the peripheral, and then in my right eye, I had a sharp pain where it felt like somebody was sticking a needle in my eye. And so I went to the ER, and they told me, hey, oh yeah, you had a severe migraine, a real bad migraine. Well, come to find out, it wasn't a migraine; it was a TIA. It was a small stroke. It was the warning sign that I was about to have a stroke. And so, and it again, it wasn't their fault. I was 30 years old. I was very fit. I'm with, you know, a special operations unit. And so we train every day, as far as physical fitness, always in the gym, always, just trying to stay on top of our health, our physical appearance and capabilities. And so nobody thought that me at 30 years old was having a small stroke. And so when I came out the bird that day, getting back to the birds, I'm sorry, we call the plane a bird. I'm sorry. But when I came out the bird, I didn't have any idea what was happening. The only time that things got kind of weird to me was because it was a night jump, and the place where we were jumping had like little small shrubs and little ditches around it. Like, they tell you not to look down, but listen, I'm from the hood. I'm trying to look down to make sure I don't get lost in the woods. Like, I want to know where I'm landing, and I want to know how to let people know how to find me. You know what I'm saying? So I look down every time I've jumped. I look down. And so, I look down, and the crazy thing, they call it phantom movement. I was getting the sensation as though my feet and knees were together, and they weren't. They were wide apart. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, I ain't think too much about it. I hit the ground, and then I'm like, okay, man, I literally felt my ankle snap, and my boot, this my leg, my boot was like this, the other way. And so, I was like, oh man, I made a mistake. I honestly still did not think that it had anything to do with a stroke. I thought, well, maybe I'm just nervous or whatever, and whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Let me
I
ask.
get to the hospital, and that's when they tell me, like, yeah, it's happening. It happened on the table when I went paralyzed.
Let me ask Dr. Swift or Dr. McClure, can you all explain PTSD to us? And then, Mr. Antoine, can you tell us what symptoms that you have with the PTSD? For instance, are you, are there flashbacks? Are you waking up at night, or things like that? But first, either Dr. Swift or Dr. McClure, can you explain what PTSD is?
I have one. Do you care?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Dr. Monique? Okay. Just a brief background here. Post-traumatic stress disorder is listed as a disorder in which a person has difficulty recovering after experiencing or witnessing a terrifying event. The condition may last months or years, with triggers that can bring back memories of the trauma, accompanied by intense emotional and physical reactions. Some of the symptoms might include nightmares, unwanted memories of the trauma, avoidance of situations that bring back memories of the trauma, heightened reactions, anxiety, or a depressed mood. I don't know if Dr. Swift has anything to add or others.
Yeah, I mean, I think you essentially covered some basic aspects of it. Symptoms are, sometimes people get intrusive symptoms where they're having flashbacks or experiencing thoughts that are intruding into their thinking. Sometimes there is a disruption in how their worldview, how they see themselves, how their security in the world. Sometimes there are re-experiencing symptoms. Well, those are the flashbacks. So yeah, you essentially covered and these are symptoms that tend to last, right? And they create impairment in daily function.
Mm. And Sister Monique, can you talk a little bit about what happens when an individual goes unconscious in a painful experience?
It's Sister Nicole.
Sister Nicole, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, once that is your engrams that you've actually created in your mind. So whereas your analytical mind is the thing that rationalize everything that happens to you. Well, once you meet with trauma, and pain is trauma, fear is trauma. So once you meet with trauma, your analytical mind shuts down. And then your reactive mind, which is not rational, it has no rationalization to it. It then takes over in control and creates engrams from the time your pain is happening all the way to the time that your body feel like it is done and over with. So that can be days, that can be weeks, that can even be months where you're actually walking around with that reactive mind and your mind is just building engrams in it and attaching this in the reactive engram bank. So that becomes where it becomes the controller of your faith. So it just starts to decide things on how you're going to act. And then you have aberrations. The aberrations are basically things that happen around you. When you go through the trauma, then your mind is shut down. Your reactive mind is working, is taking control. It's just the irrational mind that basically just record everything, record. It has no way of rationalizing it. So therefore, the engrams are built in your mindset. And then that becomes your rationale. Is actually irrational that becomes rationale to you. It's like making evil seem fair seeming because everything is chopped up and broken up inside your mindset now. And now the aberrations, which is created from anything, you have verbal aberrations as well as just physical aberrations, or not really physics, hearing aberrations, where you have hearing content as well as verbal content. So depending on what people said around you, it can be inside the engram. And once the engram get keyed in, is not restimulated yet. Things in your life can restimulate it to where it just starts to keep running because it's been restimulated and it can continue to be restimulated until this actually removed from your reactive engram bank, removed and processed correctly in the standard memory bank. So right now, when you hurt yourself, your mind was opened. I mean, your reactive mind was at work.
Yes, thank you. So when you say re-stimulated, for instance, you're talking about a certain action, right? That a certain action that a person does that is created from that engram, right? For instance, if we and I'm gonna get off the screen here because I'm trying to do two things at one time. You know, I can't chew gum and pat my belly at the same time. So for instance, let's say that you eat something and it's disagreeable with you and you regurgitate it, then that can create an engram to where you no longer like that food, and you actually will get sick, right? You may get sick when that food is present or someone offers it to you. Is that something that would be what you would say a as you could say it better than I can?
Not so much in that order. When you're talking about the regurgitation, everything the individual who's in pain does not the engrams are not being created by the individual who's in pain. It's created by the things that's going on around them. So say that you know, if say that you're in the womb, or you don't even, let's not use the womb because we're going to talk about getting engrams outside the womb. So say that you're in pain and someone around you say something like, "Ugh, that makes me so sick," and you're in pain. You're creating an engram that has now been locked in that engram. So now it gets keyed in, and you're sitting here and you're eating something, and is re-stimulated. So now you're feeling nausea, sick, like you want to regurgitate it, and it's not really you. It's not really you who wanted to regurgitate. It's just an engram, and that's the aberration that is going on. The aberration is now being used right now. So the engram commands your fate and uses the aberration for the action or the response that you're going to start to make now.
Okay. So, Brother Antoine, so did you experience, anything like that? I mean, I know that, the trauma of what you went through, and you were talking about turning to alcohol, right? So to the mental health professionals, is that something that is seen with PTSD as well?
Well, so I want to be clear, because I am a huge fan of making sure that we're not pathologizing something that is somewhat expected. And Antoine, I apologize because I'm captivated by the story, but what you're talking about is trauma, major trauma, physical trauma, mental health trauma. And so as it was kind of stated earlier, that post-traumatic stress that comes out of that is certainly something that should be expected in probably the majority of people who would go through a situation like that. So I think it's important for us to first kind of step back and say, we're not pathologizing something as inappropriate, given the severity of this trauma, and certainly as you've kind of alluded to, Antoine, the recovery process and all of the things that come in the recovery process afterwards that you have to deal with. So I just want to kind of take a step back and make sure, for the people who are joining us, there is certainly some expectations of mental health challenges that would be expected. As you said, Antoine, when people first said, "Hey, we're going to start you off with some antidepressants and anti-anxiolytics because we know you're going to go through a major recovery process, and there's going to be, peaks and valleys with that." So I certainly just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah. I have a question. I'm sorry. I have a question for Antoine. I don't want to interrupt your flow, Dwayne, but in light of what Sister Nicole was talking about as it relates to engrams, I don't know if you kind of captured all of what she was saying, but that in the moment of injury, that your brain is not necessarily processing things from a rational perspective. And I was wondering, as you reflect back and think about that, do you recall, or were there any indications that you are aware of that things were said at the time that kind of stuck with you in a way that, it carried on afterward? I think you're on mute.
You can't hear.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay, so the only thing that was said at the time that I hit the ground was the expletive. I yelled out an expletive very loud. And then, of course, when I was sitting on the table, so at that time, the bottom part of my right leg wasn't working, and we didn't know it because nobody thought to pay attention to that. But then when I got to the hospital, and I literally, the nurse told me to move the doctor told me to move my arm so the nurse could do the blood cuff, and I told her that I did, and she said she didn't. the first thought that came to my mind was oh, expletive, like I'm finna die, like, because I'm literally, again, I'm feeling that same phantom movement where I told my body to move. I'm getting the sensation that it moved because the nurse told me to move prior, and I said okay, and I felt like I did just like this, and when the doc said do it again, and I was like, I did. I looked over, I said yes ma'am, and then I felt again, my mind was getting the sensation. I'm looking at my arm and I'm feeling that it's doing this, but it was just sitting there. And that's when they started going through poking and prodding. So like like right now when I go to the doctor, and I've had to see a lot of doctors, and anybody that knows, when you've had a stroke or a heart attack or anything, every time you visit a doctor, it becomes one of those serious moments where they gotta most of the time I'm fighting for them not to keep me overnight, you know what I'm saying, because they want to observe me because I've had 2 strokes essentially at the age of 30. And so every time that I've visited a doctor for something that has happened, and one time I got shocked by electricity, they kept me overnight because of the fact that I had a stroke and I had a hole in my heart, which was another thing that came out. It was just so many things that came out of this stroke. This stroke revealed a lot of things. It revealed that I had a hole in my heart. It revealed that I also, what they call the atrial septic defect, ASD. I had that, and then 2 weeks after I had the big stroke, I had a pulmonary embolism, a clot in my lungs. So I mean, literally, it was after another, one thing after the other, and so I just associated. At that time, I associated everything like my life is messed up, like I'm done, like I'm falling apart. And to Sister Nicole's, I said that correct, right, Sister Nicole? Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I want to make sure I ain't call you Sister Monique, like Brother Muhammad did. I ain't trying to throw you under the bus, bro. Nah. So like Sister Nicole said, one thing that even to this day, when it comes to that, because I have PTSD not just from that, but from my the things I experienced in Afghanistan, and so I've always kind of had that drinking from that Afghanistan tour. I've always been drinking because when you're still a soldier, they expect you to soldier. Like, you know what I'm saying? People can say and be politically correct all day, but weakness is not accepted. And anything that's not strong looks like weakness to them. And so I just didn't want to perpetuate that in any type of way. And so I definitely, drank to kind of get myself through. But when I had the stroke, it was like it just kind of multiplied everything, because now instead of having flashbacks to Afghanistan, when I smell dead flesh, or when I see dead flesh, like we're my wife's grinding the meat, I still don't like to see grinding meat because of the things that I saw. Human body look like that, you know what I'm saying? So different things that I saw without grossing people out, that I saw that just, there are different triggers to those things. But back, Sister Monique, I apologize. When it came to the blood cuff, now every time I get the blood cuff, even though my arm is perfectly fine, I get the fear that I'm going paralyzed again. And I'm looking at my arm moving, but my mind just jumps back to me being paralyzed on the table. It's still a fear of mine that not even my wife knows until, of course, she sees this.
So just even, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, Brother Antoine, I'm thinking about the moment when you were talking about medication that the doctors were putting you on, depression, anxiety, and that sort. And I'm thinking about your own forms of resilience, where you're just saying, how am I going to pull myself through this? So I think you said the first 15 days were some of the toughest days for you. And so I'm trying to find this middle ground. When did you find your voice where you're saying, all right, the doctors are saying this, and here's my experience, and here's where I'm going to start inserting myself into my own wellness. I want to find a way to improve my situation, my mind, my body, my spirit in the middle of this conversation, if that makes sense. When did you assert yourself in the middle of this and say, I'm listening to the doctors and I'm listening to my own experience and I'm validating my own experience and I'm learning and honing my own voice?
So,
could you tell us a little bit about that process?
Yeah, so Dr. McClure, I would tell you, if I'm being in all honesty, the even though I was telling myself that I got to get past this, I got to stay positive, I got my daughters watching me, that was probably the hardest thing for me to actually do. Saying it was something the military taught me. Keep pushing on. You know what I'm saying? I was still thinking about my soldiers as well, you know, because I was a leader. So I'm thinking, you know, like, you know, at this time, I'm thinking like, man, you know, eventually there are soldiers that weren't directly working under me, but they were looking at me. They were watching me go through this. They were soldiers that I had known. They were still in my unit. And so they were very concerned. And so I was trying to stay strong for them. But the point where it turned for me, where I think it was no more just lip service. It was, I got to do something, was actually because Marquita, my wife, said, hey, we know it happened. We know where we are now, but this is not what God has for us. Like she literally said, because it took the military about a month, because I had to heal my ankle had to heal before I could do anything else with the military, because I had to have surgery. They did an emergency surgery on my ankle. So I had to at least start being able to put pressure on it, not heal, but be able to I had to at least be able to put pressure on it. And so once I was able to do that, I was able to actually go through rehab and all that stuff. But that was a whole month later. So for that month, after the first 15 days, for that month that I was sitting there and like, okay, you know, what's next? It was my wife. She gave me a sense of urgency. Like, I need you to fight. You know, I need you to push through it. She saw me go. I think she hasn't said it to me, but I think she saw me go back into an area of, you know, post Afghanistan. You know what I'm saying? And she was afraid. She was very afraid. And so, I mean, between her prayers and her diligent work, I mean, not to gross anybody out, but at this time, you know, I'm still home after I had the surgery. I'm still weak on one side, and you know, the side that I had that I was paralyzed on, and the other side I couldn't walk on because I had just had surgery. So my wife had to literally wipe me. She had to bathe me in the bed. I mean, this was a girl that I've been with since I was 16 years old. And so for her to still see something in me that she was still attracted to, she still kissed me every morning, still hugged me, still loved me, still encouraged me.
Right.
For her to do that, like, I felt like, well, heck, if she still got this much faith in me, then ain't nothing else that I got to be worried about. I got to push through this. And no matter how hard it gets, I have to continue to push because she's counting on me. And so that for me, that was the turning point, sir.
Hey, Antoine.
That's beautiful. That was just a follow-up. It's on page 43. You're talking about those two faces, and it sounds like the military expects a certain face from you, and maybe the doctors are expecting a certain face, and Marquita stepped in and helped you to define and redefine your own space. Thank you. I'm taking that away as a lesson in this moment. Thank you. I don't know if Sister Nicole had something, or Dr. Hinton.
I did have something to say because I'm listening to you, and I read your book, and each time that I was reading it, I was just highlighting the parts in it where engrams was created in you. When you talk about Afghanistan, each time pain, and I want everybody to understand pain and fear, those are the two ways that engrams are created. Pain is the mother of emotions, and fear is also the father. And that's the way I look at it. And I say pain because pain births out all these different type of emotions. Fear is strong in itself. It's one type of emotion. It's strong within itself because it's the opposite side of faith when it comes to God. So when you fear something, you're literally, when God said, fear me alone and only me, you're not supposed to fear anything else. So when you literally fear something, you're fearing it more than God, your analytical mind shuts down. It becomes completely shut down. So each time you were in Afghanistan and you were fearing, your reactive mind was open and taking control, and then you were creating engrams. Now, I wanted to even talk about, I'm not a doctor, I don't have no doctor degree, but I do study science of the mental health, and I do am trying to really studying it in auditing. I study it because it is one of the unstudied things is the mind. It is so unstudied, and it's so very powerful. We don't even understand how powerful it is. But when I look at it and I talk about PTSD, everything that you're talking about is talking about aberrations that springs from those engrams. Those engrams that you have, and there's a name for it. It's called the Conjure Survival Engram, which lays across the 4 dynamics. It's an engram that's supposed to lay across the 4 dynamics of survival. You have your self-survival, you have sex survival, which is your family survival. You have group survival, which is your friends, your whatever you're part of, the community. And then you also have the human race survival. That's on a larger scale. So those are all the 4 dynamics that it talks about in auditing that man has. It must be and must survive in. So when you were there, it was self and group survival that was at play. You had self-survival, and when you could not self-survival, that created that conjure survival engram in you. And then when you talked about, it's not going to be something that you say when it comes to creating engrams or aberrations attached to it. It's going to be something that people around you are doing and saying that get locked in as an aberration. I'm not sure. I can do more research on PTSD, and I think I am, now that that has been brought on the table and put here. I research, but it seems to me, as I studied in auditing, that it is an aberration. It is an action that is going on with the PTSD that is attached to an engram that is going on with you. I don't, to each his own to go and get auditing. I've done it. It worked, it's good, but that is something that it doesn't take away from psychology, because it's a therapy. Yes, we need psychology. It is always good to have somebody you can talk to and get you understanding a lot of things about yourself. But the mind, as I said, just like you have a hurt knee and you have to go to therapy to get it to function correctly, sometimes you need that therapy to get that mind to open up and function correctly. And until then, we really didn't even know about the analytical mind or the reactive mind. And now that that's coming up in that play, and I study this book and I look at the world, I'm like, wow, these are the things that actually is going on in society and our minds, that we can benefit from a therapy, because our mind is not functioning correctly. And trauma is the main thing about why our mind is not functioning correctly. So we don't analyze things correctly anymore. We're completely living on that reactive mind way, and it's completely controlling our lives because trauma has been the call of our everyday life.
So I have that was very comprehensive, Sister Nicole. I wanted to, I guess, jump back to Antoine. I'm curious to know, I don't know if we referenced it already, but this was really just 4 and change years ago. Yeah. So what happened is not, it wasn't way back when, right? This was recent, relatively recent. And so I wanted to find out what, residual, two questions kind of, what residual struggles are there? Because it certainly sounds like you have come a long way. You've made major strides, but you did reference still having some physical struggles. So, but on a emotional, psychological level, what other residual struggles are there? And then also, when in writing this book, what is it that you really wanted your readers to walk away with? Because there's a lot of powerful lessons in it. But what was if you can distill it down to one thing, what was the thing you wanted your readers to walk away with?
Okay. So first I'll talk about the residual effects. For me, one of them is my ability to word find. I have problems sometimes, like getting words out. I have problem like expressing. I'll see a word in my head, but that's not what I actually end up saying. And it's hard to explain. But it's just where I am. And that's part of the reason why I have a stutter sometimes, is because it's hard for me to kind of make my mouth say what my mind is saying.
Is there an aphasia? Have they ever talked?
Yes, ma'am. I've been diagnosed with aphasia. That's one of the things that of course the VA found, and they were like, yeah, we're gonna. They diagnosed me with it.
Yeah.
The other thing that still residual is probably just dealing with the strength on my right side. It's not where I want it, where I feel it was prior, but that's still something that I'm working on that I think I can overcome over time. It's just something that, when you are used to being a certain way or doing things a certain way, especially in men, we want things to happen right now. We want to see instant results. And so that's one of the other things is the strength on the right side of my body. I can feel it when I'm doing push-ups or trying to lift weights. I'm a little weaker on this side still. When it comes to the message that I wanted my readers to get, it's funny that you say that, Dr. Swift, because you asked that question, because and that you caught the fact that there were different messages that I put out throughout the book. But I think the one that I wanted everyone to take from the book is that no matter what life throws at you, you have to continue to encourage yourself. You have to continue to get past and be resilient. Be I don't want to say the master of your own fate, but you have to realize that God can do so much. I grew up, church, everything like that, but it's one of those meet me at the middle of the road type things. Like I could sit there and pray and say, God is going to heal me. God is going to do all these things. And he can, if that's your thing, I'm not knocking that, but I also believe that I have to do something. I have to put in the work. I have to continue to work. And, where I felt like God's action on it was saving my life. My action was improving my life. And so once I got to that point where I realized I had to meet him in the middle, and I had to do some work. I couldn't expect somebody to do the work for me. I'll tell you one quick thing that actually almost hurt that hurt my marriage, is because I told my wife, and I had to say, baby, I'm going to this program in Tampa. Marquita didn't want me to go to the program at first because she wanted to be there and kind of make sure that everything was being done right. And I said, no, in order for me to really get right, I gotta do this on my own. I gotta figure this out. I gotta walk this road by myself for a while because I don't want to become dependent on you helping me. Because she was gonna have to go back to work. She had our daughter still to take care of. If I became dependent on her, in my opinion, I would have became a sorry man. And that's nothing against wives taking care of their spouses, but I feel like a man should always want to lessen the burden on his wife and not increase it. So that was the part that, to answer your question, that was the part for me. I feel like I wanted to get to everybody that you have to do the work. It's not going to just happen. You got to do the work.
There's so much to unpack there, and that was very powerful, Antoine. I wrote down a couple things that I think for our audience can really be helpful. So, leaning on your support system, at least initially. You talked about your family, the dedication, and that pivotal conversation with your wife. But for people who may be listening and may be struggling with other challenges, whether it's physical health challenges or mental health challenges, can you just talk a little bit more about the importance of that support system and relying on it? Because when you get to the point of, or I should say, before you got to the point of kind of going, hey, I got to do some things on my own. I got to kind of get myself up and moving. You did have to rely on someone else. In this case, your wife, and I'm sure your father and others. But for people out there who may be struggling, I think sometimes, certainly in my practices, people have a hard time going, I need help, and I'm going to rely on somebody else to kind of get me to the point where I can say, hey, I'm going to do some things on my own.
And so, and let me make a correction. When I say I had to do it on my own, that meant, for me, it meant I had to kind of tell Marquis to step back and let these people help me. I had to go through that process on my own of rehab. But what I'll say to anybody that's dealing with mental health, the noise can get the loudest in the dark corners of your mind. So as you start, when you start thinking that you're alone, when you start thinking that you got to go through it by yourself, everybody, when they're going through something, it's a natural reaction for us to say, woe is me. The world is against me. Nobody else can understand. You have to get past those moments. You have to, when you start thinking about that, you have to challenge those thoughts. And you challenge those thoughts by surrounding yourself by the people that you know love you. It's not many people in this world that can say nobody in the world loves them or nobody in the world cares for them. You have to surround yourself around those people, because those dark corners, not only can they become loud, they can also feel like they don't end. Like you're just walking down a tunnel and it's just you by yourself. Hello, anybody there? Like I mean, it can get that dark sometimes. And so I've been there. I'll be honest with you. I just talked to my wife about that this morning. One of the issues that I have right now, even with my meditation time and all that stuff, I don't like total silence. I have to have some type of music or something playing, because when I am silent, or when it is silent, too quiet, my mind starts to go like all over the place. It's hard for me to focus at work, before, when I'm going to bed. I have to have music playing when I go to bed, because I'll end up waking up from my thoughts. And so like, this is something that I've experienced since Afghanistan, but it got worse after the stroke. Like, it was like, yeah, it was just weird. It's a weird thing. And I don't mind it because I love music, but it's just one of those things that I noticed, that that quiet moments for me are more dangerous for me, because I feel like I can't hone in on one thing. Sitting in briefings, sitting in meetings, it's tough. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I think that's very powerful. And just know I might steal this. Dark corners become the loudest. Just know that I might steal that.
We're all on that one.
Oh, it's yours, sir. It's yours.
But take an inventory of what you need, especially in terms of not having it completely silent or whatever. I still think that's a message that other folks really can benefit from, because there's nothing wrong with you going, hey, this is what I need in order to progress and be okay, right? Be with my wife, be present and whatnot. I think sometimes folks who struggle with mental illnesses think, boy, if I can't get it 100% right, then I'm 100% wrong. And that's just not the case, just based on what you just said. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We have a caller on the line that would like to ask a question. Brother Shabazz, go right ahead and ask your question.
All right, peace, brother. Assalamu alaikum. Greetings to the panel. I'm calling in from the Richmond, Virginia area, and I'm in the mental health field myself, qualified mental health professional, and I'm currently waiting on my credentials back from the board to be a LMHP-R. My issue is, and I'm just tuning in, so if I'm off topic of what y'all already been talking about, I apologize. But it was just some things that was kind of weighing on me, and I'm familiar with the channel. I love what y'all are doing. I don't think it's enough discussions when it comes to Black mental health. I myself, early on, was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, very early on. Went through addiction, went through incarceration, went through that whole gamut there. Was able to turn my life around, went back to school, as I just told you, got my credentials. However, especially dealing in this field, as they say, counselors need counseling. One of the issues I have is with it being a small circle of mental health providers in my area, I don't know how to go about seeking counseling and feeling comfortable with the confidentiality, knowing that this is my field. I may run into these people later. And being in the field, I know that people are not always professional. So therefore, a lot of issues with compassion fatigue, burnout, and issues of my past that are coming up that I want to address professionally, I'm hesitant to get that professional help just for that lack of trust and fearing that whatever I reveal might me and my credentials in my career. Am I making sense? And I'm just looking for any type of feedback.
Just hold on, and we'll get their reply, and then if you need to make an additional comment, you can.
Yeah, I think you're making a lot of sense, first off, but and we touched on this in a previous chat. So if it's one thing that this pandemic has taught us, it's that there are multiple ways to seek assistance, particularly in the mental health field, with a counselor, with a therapist, whatnot. So even though you're talking about kind of a small area where you live at, and maybe concerned about running into people who are kind of in your professional circle, so to speak, now you have a real opportunity to utilize, telemedicine, behavioral health, telemental health services to really connect to people that go well beyond your geographical location. I would also challenge you to not discount the people in your area. I know circles are small, but that doesn't mean everybody won't have your confidence and won't be professional. So I certainly wouldn't eliminate that, but you certainly have an opportunity to utilize telebehavioral health services or psych services or therapy. So,
Yeah.
others?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Hinton. I wanted to say, stress the same thing you already stressed about telemental health is a thing now. And although there's some limitations there, because if you're under insurance or the person is licensed, of course, they're restricted to the state wherein the person resides. So there's some restrictions there, but there are people who are licensed in multiple states. In New York, I'm in New Jersey, and many people between New York and New Jersey are licensed in both states. I'm licensed in New York and New Jersey, and many others are as well. So, if you have in your area kind of a nearby state where that it's likely people, you're in Virginia, I think you said, maybe DC, I don't know how far you are, that might be a pool of people that you can connect with as well. But also I wanted to make mention of people there are many people out there who are not restricted by the license who do coaching type work, spiritual coaching, spiritual life coaching type of work. And that might be something also that you look into as well. And I want to, of course, plug the Association of Black Psychologists, because I think the key thing here is that if you trusted the person, if you had a good rapport with the person that you're working with, they could live next door to you and you probably wouldn't care. So I think it's a matter also primarily of being able to connect with somebody that you trust. And if you deal with someone who looks like you, who understands like you, then maybe that trust can grow and develop there. So resource, Association of Black Psychologists, we're all over the nation, so check that out too.
And don't forget your whatever school that you're going to, they might also have some resources for you that, depending on your tuition structure, you may already be paying for. One of the things in our earlier conversation with Antoine that he referenced was, do you have the resources, and do you even know about the resources. One of the things I tell my students all the time is you've got access to, counseling services. You're paying for it in your tuition, and yet you never utilize it. So just something else to think about.
And congratulations to you, Brother Shabazz, on your accomplishments and coming through so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Brother Shabazz.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And so we're going to go ahead and transition. We want to first give Mr. Antoine the chance. Please give us your information, where people can contact you, and so forth. Oh, we got to unmute the mic.
Man, I'm so sorry. Forgive me. Charge it to my head, not my heart. So to stay connected with me, you can do so on Facebook. It is at author Antoine Delagar, and that's ANTWANDELIGAR. You can also reach me on Instagram at Antoine Delagar, Twitter at Antoine Delagar, and I also have a website at www.antoinedelagar.com. The book is available on Amazon, and it's also, you can order it through my page as well. Thank you, and I appreciate what you guys are doing. Black excellence.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Coming on.
And so let me.
All right. And so we're going to transition here.
You're double.
Okay, there we go. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
There we go. So we're going to transition here, and we're going to talk about, and we're going to blend the two in together this last hour. And we're going to talk about the great late Martin Luther King Jr. and his struggle with severe depression and suicidal thoughts at a young age. And then we're going to also talk about the times that we're living in. And I think that this clip that we're about to play with Martin Luther King being interviewed by NBC will sum it up. It's about a 1-minute clip, and then we're going to go ahead and get right into the conversation. So let me go ahead and play this.
Over the last few years, I would say over the last few months, gone through a lot of soul searching and agonizing moments. And I've come to see that we have difficult days ahead, and some of the old optimism was a little superficial, and now it must be tempered with a solid realism. And I think the realistic fact is that we still have a long, long way to go.
Were you all able to hear that clip?
No,
Not really. Mm-mm.
Oh,
No.
it was the volume was kind of low. Okay.
Yes.
Well, basically, and I'll try to. There was a longer clip, and I'll try to find that. But it sounds we're getting a little bit of feedback from somebody. I wonder if that's me. Okay. So let me see. I think that might be this clip. Okay, there we go. It was another video that was playing. So basically, Martin Luther King was basically saying that, the cold realism of the reality that he was forced to confront with the system of white supremacy, institutional racism that was so ingrained, in the fabric of America, caused him to have second thoughts on his push for integrating into America, and that he believed that he was integrating our people into a burning house. So from that, and talking about Martin Luther King and the depression that he went through, can we strike up that conversation and kind of mix it up with the times that we're living in now, especially as Black people? We're dealing with so many different ills and ills. Number one, the pandemic has caused us to face these pre-existing conditions, and the question is, where did these pre-existing conditions come from? Because as we know, as a people, our constitution as Black people is very strong. However, when you live in a food desert and when you lack hospitals in your community, and there's so many other different social ills that we can talk about. Let's just go ahead and get into it. First of all, starting off with you all, what would you say about Martin Luther King and the depression that he suffered, and the suicidal thoughts that he had at a young age, and those that young people have today?
That's a lot to unpack.
Talk about this, right?
Right. That's
so many layers.
Right.
I had to put y'all in the hot seat. That's what,
Right.
that's what the program is for. We got to get into
Put
it.
him in the hot seat.
So
I
go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Swift.
A thought that came to mind as he was speaking and sharing what Dr. Martin Luther King was talking about in terms of integrating into a burning building, like his feeling that, hey, I've spent a good trajectory of my life trying to help my people be equal to or equaled with white people. And now you know what? I think maybe that wasn't the right thing. Interestingly, that revelation came after he met with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but I think that's another piece for our later discussion. But the thing that came to mind is something that is stressed within Association of Black Psychologists and a lot of the scholarships that is written, especially with Dr. Wade Nobles, Naeem Akbar, and so forth, that basically our illness as a people, that our illness is due to our assimilation into the mind of our oppressors, essentially. And when he was sharing what Dr. Martin Luther King was saying, it made me think about that and how I wonder if there was some sort of awareness of that when he made that statement, if there was some awareness that we're again coming into the mind of our oppressor. For us, creates more illness, creates more stress, because we'll never be what we're not. And we're in a world that requires us to be something that we're not in order to be accepted. So there's this eternal, I guess, effort to get away from yourself when you're in that space. Versus, which the other side of that he didn't say was, he began to think toward the ideology of separation, is where he was in those later stages of his development. And the he I'm referring to is Dr. Martin Luther King. He began to think towards separation. So
see, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I think the evolution is that understanding that it's not just assimilation, but it's also kind of having your own independence in this environment, and there may be room to certainly debate that. But when you talk about suicidal ideation and you talk about depression, I think one of the things that we see very common is people then lose that sense of self, that self-identity, right? Everything in a very stereotypical way, everything becomes catastrophized, and people can't find their own way. But if we allow the patient, we allow the person to get back to kind of a reset point where they have some independence and they are able to say, this is who I am, this is how I'm going to thrive, live in this situation, then I think that gets a little bit better. And my understanding and my readings of King's messages and others, particularly towards the later stages, is the next step of that evolutionary process was finding for us as African Americans, as Blacks, finding our own independence in this kind of world, so to speak. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I like what both of you actually have stated, but I love what you stated, Sister Swift, because I think that the more Martin Luther King came into the understanding of truth, because as it says in pretty much Dianetics therapy, but let's just even use what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, we cast truth at falsehood until it knocks out his brain. So I think that the more that he came into truth, the more his understanding grew, that that we no longer needed to be among these people, that we needed to be separated. That now it was like, look, all of what I'm doing to try to get us to be accepted by a people, losing lives just to be accepted, you losing lives just to walk on the same school grounds, losing lives just to go and sit in the same restaurant as someone. So as this started to unravel, he started to come into truth. And we know truth to be a powerful thing to come into. And when he came into it, he started to understand, I'm putting my people in a burning house. I don't need to put them in a burning house. If this is the way, I mean, it's like you being a parent of children. You realize your child is being abused there. Are you going to go and still take your child to be abused there? Okay, we're going to drop you off again. Child screaming, shouting, crying. Then you find out your child died. You know what I'm saying? These are the things that the reality that Martin Luther King was facing on his journey of trying to fight for our freedom, justice, and equality, and then realize by the light of truth. Now, I don't know if, did he come into that thought after he met the Honorable Elijah Muhammad? I guess that'll be another thought later on. You can't be around the light of truth and not have that light shine through you. And so he started to come into truth and a different understanding. And as he grew into that understanding, then his actions started to follow, because as a man thinketh, so shall it be. Now, as far as the suicidal, in Dianetics therapy, there's a word of talking about that, and that's an ally computation, which happens to be attached to the engram. And the ally computation is attached to the engram like a grandmother, a mother, or aunt. When the mother was carrying him, there was thoughts or even discussion of abortion. And when she was carrying him, that thought and discussion of abortion, someone was around being sympathetic to that, sympathetic to her by saying, no, you don't need to do this. We got you. We're going to help you take care of this. I know this is a crazy, whatever was being stated to help her to understand that she can actually have this baby and still, be whatever, be okay. So that was the grandmother, because it stated that after the grandmother passed is when he tried to commit suicide twice. So the grandmother was an ally computation to his engram. That was the person that an ally computation is something that I can't live without it. It is needed in my life for me to survive. And if it goes away, either go away physically or pass away, I can no longer live without it. I can't live. That's the ally computation. His grandmother went away. So then he in turn felt like his life was no more valued because his grandmother was his ally computation to his survival. That's what is taught in auditing.
And I certainly always appreciate the different perspectives, right? Because, how you define it, how I process it and conceptualize it of loss and of that grief, particularly during a time in history where we didn't have very many avenues for nurturance and support. That loss is powerful, and I think for our viewers, people who go through significant loss, particularly if they think that's the linchpin, that's that spark, or that's that nudge towards real depression and sometimes suicidal ideations.
Let me ask a question. Dr. McClure, did you want to say something real quick? I'll
Well,
yield.
I was thinking about the. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
You can hear me okay. So I'm thinking broadly with Dr. King and the issue of always trying to understand what our identity is as individuals and as a people. And then I'm thinking about the broader context of our conversation about post-traumatic stress disorder. And, we've said this previously that we're constantly trying to form our identities, understand who we are, but we're not quite post the trauma. So the traumas are ongoing, as we've seen in the news over the last few weeks. And as the traumas are ongoing, our identities are always being formed in this ebb and flow, instability constantly. And so one of the thoughts I was putting forth is like spiritual and psychological grounding. There is a modality of emotional intelligence that talks about 5 areas of self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal skills, decision-making, and stress management. These 5 areas basically have 15 subsets underneath it, and it's all considered to be a composite of what wellness looks like. So once again, we're always trying to define wellness in the space of stability, instability, and our identity in terms of who we are. One caveat to that is when I look at my brother, I have an older and younger brother, but on our birth certificates, it has different racial groups, yet we all share the same parents. So my brother, born in 1968, I believe he's considered Negro. I'm born in 1971. I'm considered Black, and my younger brother, born in 1980, is considered African American. So in one household, 3 brothers with 3 different quote unquote racial designations, we are still trying to fix who we are in terms of an identity. And in the midst of trauma and complicated trauma and complicated grief. And so I would imagine Dr. King is a part of that. He is not outside of that group. He's not outside of those modes of definition. So he experiences the same conflict and trauma that we all do in terms of identity. So I'm putting that forth as those 5 areas as a way to psychologically ground yourself between your self-perception, your decision-making, your problem solving, but then to go deeper and to make sure you have a spiritual grounding because these waves that come to knock people over can knock over the strongest of people. And as you can see, Dr. King wrestled with this space. And there are really times where he's been knocked over. And I imagine there are other people in the rights that have been knocked over by these experiences. But fortifying ourselves, we learn more about ourselves. We learn more in this process to ground ourselves spiritually and psychologically these moments, as well as other modes to just say, what are these forces that are going to ground me? Because the waves are always coming. And the more we can ground ourselves, we can find out what our identities actually look like individually and collectively.
Let me chime in on
Brother
that.
Steve?
That's powerful. What you've all said has been pretty powerful just starting off this second hour. And I think that when we think about suicide and Sister Nicole, that was, very enlightening, going back to what, may be the cause of these, because why do some have these suicidal thoughts and others don't? However, when we look at today, one of the things that you're saying, Dr. McClure, is so powerful because when we think about young people today and the suicidal thoughts, there's so many dynamics that are at play here, and that you almost can't pin it down to just one thing. And I think this may be why Dr. Martin Luther King was saying that he feels that he's integrating his people into a burning house, because as you're saying, Dr. McClure, this integration, we are not even able to really define ourselves. We're really being defined by external forces. And so now, you know, I just wonder, how does that play into the increasing suicide rate among young people today? You know, aside from just bullying, what are some other contributing factors that are taking place among young people?
Can I speak first? Um, there are four dynamics that I stated earlier, which men has to survive in: self, group, sex, and then of course the human race in general. They need to be successful in these dynamics. There are engrams, which the one that I talked about, the contra survival engram, which lies across those dynamics, meaning that it is your, it's the engram that can actually, if it has an allied computation attached to it, can cause you to be suicidal and then be successful at it, where we have seen some are. We have suppressor. So when Martin Luther King talked about, I feel like I'm putting them in, integrating them into the burning house, we put our children back in the hands of people that have treated us wrong from the time we stepped foot on this soil, and made it okay for them to control every aspect, every dynamic of our lives. They control the self, they control the sex, they control the group, and they control the human race. We put our children right back there. That's a suppressor. We've just put them in the hands of a suppressor who sees no good in us accomplishing these four dynamics. You take a person, young children coming out of school, they don't even have, you have the, what is called it, the prison, the school, the prison pipeline. You have these aspects going on. Our children don't understand that. They're in school, they're thinking they're supposed to learn how to be outside of school, how to function outside of school. They graduate from school and many of them find no one is trying to hire me. They don't understand. I'm an American. I'm Black. I'm African American. I'm whatever I'm going to be calling myself. I deserve to get a job. I went to school here. I was born in America. My mother paid taxes. I deserve to get a job and work. You have to survive across those four dynamics. You can't take care of your family. You're depressed. That's a man's job, to take care of his family. It's a man's job to survive for self. These are the four dynamics that are being messed with right now by society. It's a man's job to protect the human race, to be that defense in the human race. It's a man's job. So you got these young boys committing suicide. They cannot survive in their dynamics. There's a suppressor on the scene that is taking away those dynamics, making it hard for them to accomplish success and to be what they're created to be. God created us as a purpose, created man to go and kill the bacon and bring it home.
Well,
created the woman.
I certainly can agree with some of that. I won't agree with all of it. There are certainly pockets, large pockets, of folks who have that struggle, but there are certainly people who don't. And so I think it's important for us not to kind of make blanket statements that everybody is kind of going through this. And I don't think that was your intent, but I do think it's important for everyone to kind of have an understanding. Again, when we talk about suicide, somebody has gotten to their lowest point where they're willing to do something that's contraindicated to their own survival, right? To their own basic human instincts by taking their life. And that's something that I hope that we all can agree on is something that is, well, tragic, but is something that we really need to kind of help people to repair and get that sense of self back, because it's not just, the external factors, but there's also internal factors that we have to consider.
Let me chime in just real quick, because I understand to a degree what Sister Nicole is saying, and I'll tell you why. I just watched a documentary last night. It was not Alec Baldwin. Help me out, y'all. Baldwin fire next time. But
James
one of
Baldwin.
the James Baldwin, thank you. And one of the things that he said that was so powerful was that he was saying that, you know, when we're children, we're playing, we're interacting and everything at a young age. And then he said at the age of 5, as Sister Nicole was saying, at the age of 5, we realize that we are not a part of this fabric of America. We realize that we're not white. We realize that we're not wealthy. We realize that we're not, we don't have privilege. And so, I mean, so to get a sense of self, that's very difficult to do when everything in the society, including the language, black is seen as negative, blackball you, blackmail you, angel food cake is black, and angel food cake is white, and devil's food cake is black. So it's
But
just
I disagree with that. I disagree
Okay.
with that because
This is gonna be a good conversation.
because at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to instill in our children some identity, some rich pride in our identity as African Americans or blacks. It's our responsibility to do that, and I agree that the kind of overall system doesn't do us any favors, but we know that, and so then we have a responsibility to teach beyond what is taught in our mainstream institutions. So it's not balance. I certainly don't think everything is balance, but it is our responsibility. It's my responsibility as a father, first and foremost, of a son, to make sure that I instill in him a sense of pride when it comes to his heritage, to his sense of identity, and cement his place in the world, wherever it is that he ultimately chooses to live. I cannot accept that, you know, because the system isn't built, you know, necessarily for us, that means we can't thrive in it. We absolutely can thrive in it, and everybody on this panel is proof of that, in my opinion.
I don't think anyone else is saying, I'm sorry, sis, but I don't think anyone is saying that. I don't think anyone is saying that we cannot survive. Clearly, you know, we, as you mentioned, we are a testament, all of us, but we are collectively a testament to survival against the worst odds. But I think the point that's being made is not, it's the recognition that that there is a power that is a force that is coming against us. That even though we have this inner drive, this inner power, this inner strength, this inner resolve to thrive and survive, there's still a force coming against us that causes friction. And those two forces that are opposing causes friction such that we become depressed, such that we become anxious, such that we can't determine our destiny in a way that we want to, because there are invisible glass ceilings and there are roadblocks that are in the way. These are real issues that we struggle with, that we encounter, that no matter what has been instilled in me, it creates something in me that creates a struggle because I encounter it.
Let me chime in on that one more time, because I just did a program. I'm sorry, Dr. McClure. Did you want to get in here, and then I'll go after you? Y'all got me on. I want to just take over. Y'all go ahead.
Yeah. So I look at it like this. You know, the more I mature in understanding of this, I recognize every culture, people, ethnicity, or nationality is born into a struggle somewhere. In the Western construct, our struggle has probably been more race. Somewhere else it becomes class. Somewhere else it becomes politics. Somewhere else it becomes tribal group. So there is always this dynamic of you know, the good and bad sorts that are at battle with each other. I'm thinking about what Dr. Marimba and Nee talks about with the cultural asili, I believe ASILI, where she's talking about the germinating matrix of every family, and also Edward Bruce Bynum speaks to this. Every family has a cultural strength to it. And if you look at it, it goes back generation after generation after generation. I can look at my own family and find a theme right through the middle of the family. And if I hold on to that theme, then my identity can be found there. My strength can be found there. My resilience can be found there. Now, sure, racism is also going to be there. But for someone else that's living in China, where it may not be race, it's going to be nationality. There's always a human condition to overcome. So I recognize the racial dynamics here, and I recognize it's a part of the human condition. That doesn't mean I accept it. It just means I understand this dynamic is present in every single culture. So I think if we can look into the themes in our family systems, churches, religious organizations, there's something much deeper, much more ancient that we can tie ourselves to that takes us back to older ways of knowing, or the epistemologies that Dr. Swift is talking about. Other ways of knowing that grounds us in spirit and truth, and has kept us resilient because it kept our ancestors resilient 100 years ago and kept them resilient before they even came to this continent. So we're repeating this cycle over and over again, and we're always going to have something to battle. I think it's just our turn at bat. So, it's kicking dirt off our cleats, swinging the bat, because our parents swung, our grandparents swung, our great-grandparents swung, and the ones coming over on the slave ship, they also swung. But that's the condition. We're always swinging, and we're always looking to get to the next level. Tap back into those family systems to find out what that looks like.
I agree. And I definitely agree with what you're saying. And I definitely agree with what you're saying, Dr. Melvin. Of course, I mean, I definitely agree. I just think that, to a large degree, it's not, how can I say it? Anyway, as far as us educating our own children, it's these things like education and health and other things that when we do strive to do these things and create our own institutions, they are attacked. They are vehemently attacked. So back in the 60s, you had Black Power, and then you had the COINTELPRO movement. Today, you have the Black Lives Matter, and our cry for being acknowledged as human beings still in 2021, we're still crying for these type of things. But one of the interviews that I had yesterday was on the experiments that were conducted on Black people since our feet touched the soils of America. There were experiments on slaves. There were experiments on Black women. We all know about the Tuskegee experiment. Many of us may not know about the experiments that were conducted on Black men in prison. And many of us may not know that even children were not even exempt, that they had paid Black mothers $125 to inject Black children to see if this drug would tamper their so-called propensity to be violent. So I think that, when we think about this society, we're not just in an ordinary society where we're struggling a natural struggle. We are struggling against individuals who are literally trying to kill us. And I think that that's something that
But I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
And the history on those atrocities is, in my opinion, not even up to debate. Those are facts. Those things happen. And so I don't. I'm not debating those points. My point is, because the topic that we came to was suicide and severe depression, and is particularly in our youth today. And one of the things that I certainly have been seeing over the last 8 8 to 10 years, is the rate of suicide, particularly among African Americans and Black youth, has increased. Now, it's not, oh my God, it's horrible. Now, any death, in my opinion, first is one too many. But we are certainly seeing that people in our culture are turning to the option of suicide or completing suicide or taking their own lives more so than they have in the past. And what are the reasons for that? And I think a lot of times the reasons kind of go back to that sense of not having an identity, not seeing a path forward, not having access to resources and whatnot. And just like our earlier guest, what I certainly want to convey to everybody is a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times there are resources around us that we simply don't access. Maybe because we don't know, maybe because we don't trust, maybe because we didn't want to convey to somebody that we need help. But the fact of the matter is that they are there. There are other resources or alternatives that our people have access to that don't just include taking your own lives. That was my point.
Yes, sir. Anyone else want to chime in? Because
So, Dr. Melvin, so I have a question. I know you've been looking. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had any research which is talking about maybe an increase in the rates of suicide in the African American community, but it causes me to reflect on when things were at their very worst in our culture with the treatment, everything that was listed. Pardon me for how I'm framing it. Why were we not doing it then? But, where's that question? Why were we staying resilient? Why were we continuing to have children, continuing to move forward? And I don't know if we have that kind of research going back to the 1800s and 1700s, but I'm wondering, at least as the narrative might go, that we were not killing ourselves. We were under far worse.
I think this is, again, I'm kind of laughing in my head because I think we started talking about this in our previous last month's discussion. There is something that's different, in my opinion, today versus, let's just say, 50 years ago. And I think it's around that support system and that family system that we talked about previously. Mental illness wasn't non-existent. People may have framed it a different way. People may have viewed it a different way or ignored it in some way. But it was certainly there. And we had that conversation about, the uncle, the auntie, the, brother, sister, who's in the back room, or, that people just say, hey, that's just how they are. But that sense of support and sense of family and community, I think that is something that is severely damaged today for a number of reasons. Who do you turn to? Who do you trust? Who do you go to when, families are separated? People are incarcerated. People have died. People are quite frankly becoming parents sooner than probably one would think, and certainly one may have the ability to kind of understand, okay, this is kind of, our life journeys, our life process. This is what I instill. I think all of that plays a factor. And just the other point to your question, Dr. McClure, certainly some of the things that I'm seeing within forensic settings shows that we start to see more people of color kind of take their own lives. And that's something that I've kind of seen again over the course of time that certainly gives me pause, if that answers your question.
Dr. Monique. Yeah. I think your mic is Yes, there you go.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
You would think after what, a whole year of doing this, right?
It's all good.
Interesting question that Dr. Dwayne posed in regard to like, well, it's a great question to help us really kind of pick at what we're looking at now. Like, why didn't we see it then? When honestly, things are horrendous now for Black people in America, especially, but around the world. But, you know, my husband and I were talking about it earlier, like, no one's knocking on our door saying, send your daughter out right now, you know, at 5 o'clock. No one is, you know, we're not seeing people, you know, being hung, pregnant women, and somebody cutting their stomach open and stomping the baby's head, right? We're not seeing this level of terror and savagery that we were seeing then. Not to say things are better, but I'm just trying to make a point. Why did we not see the suicide rates that we're seeing today then, when things were so terrible, when things were so bad? I think part of that is what Dr. Hinton is talking about with the village, right? There was more of a connection that we had to one another. Yeah, we were struggling, but the bond that we had between each other, it supported us, it helped us, but also there was a notion that we've lost that is germane to the worldview of our traditional African way. And that is the idea of transcendence, being able to transcend what's happening physically. There was a unity between the physical world and the spiritual world, that we saw this on the same plane, that we saw a continuum between what is physical and what is spiritual. And so we were able to tap into this spirit part of ourselves to transcend our physical reality. That's something that we did then that we don't do now. We have lost, to a great degree, we have lost our spiritual base and sensibility. And so we no longer tap into that. Now, when life gets rough, we get pushed to a point of hopelessness and helplessness, right? Those are the two factors that they say precedes suicide. When somebody gets suicidal, if you see indications of hopelessness and helplessness, those are two red flags that you really want to kind of look out for, right? And so if I feel hopeless, I don't think tomorrow is going to be any better. I feel helpless. I know that there's nothing I can do to change it, but what else do I have to live for? Well, if I had that spirit sensibility in me, I can transcend that. I can go higher than that, and I can envision deeper. And so I think that is one of the things that we've lost. Now, I want to just make one more point going back to what we were talking about before, which is, you know, when Dr. Hinton was talking about instilling identity, that we as parents, that's important, and I fully agree with that. But I think this piece of suicide is why we really need to be ever aware of our open innocence. And that is because we get to the point of hopelessness and helplessness without the recognition that it is not our personal failure. We always think it's our personal failure. We are in some way deficient, that we are in some way, you know, just, you know, there's something wrong with us. That's why. And so I might as well just let it go and get this over with. But it's not that we are so deficient, it's that we are going uphill with boulders on our backs. That's why it feels so impossible. And so this is why it's so important for us to always be aware. Yes, instill the identity in your children and one another, but we always have to be aware that we have an open enemy among us that is always pushing us, that's causing us to experience the struggles that we're experiencing.
Can I chime in real Sister Nicole, did you want to say something?
Yes, I just wanted
I'll go
to
after you.
That was very powerful what Dr. Swift stated, because it is true. We have a vice germ that is here. Now, you're right, Dr. I'm sorry, McClure? Is it Dr. Melvin?
McClure.
McClure, yes. Okay, you're so right too when you said that, you know, it is natural for a man to have to go through so many struggles to move to the next level and the next level and keep moving up. That's true. We were created to sustain struggles and to move up. The problem is that even with Martin Luther King, when he was going out trying to make it happen, there was a vice germ pushed back. There was something that's pushing back. Normally, a person is supposed to go out there and pursue their happiness, pursue their purpose, and make it happen. But when you have something that is chopping that is preventing that, now we take that towards our children. We know that it's normal to grow up, go to school. This is what you're told in this world. Grow up, go to school, go to college, get a job, and become something. Pursue your happiness. How many of our children are able to do that? When you look at, and when I taught in the school system, I taught in schools that was socioeconomics areas where they were really worse off. You got generation of children in bad areas, and it's not just it's starting from grandmother, and maybe even great grandmother. But when you're in a world where all it is no accomplishment, no success, is downtime or struggles after struggles. We all know that struggles have to exist to make you come to the next level, but these children don't even see the next level. They stay stuck in one struggle, and it's be generation after generation to the point where you just feel like, what the purpose? If I don't know my purpose, I can't serve my purpose because God created us with a purpose, then why am I here? What purpose? I'm not serving anything. Why am I here? So then you get to that mental level, you're ready to just say, look, I can't do nothing else. You turn to drugs, you turn to alcohol, you start to go that route. Many of them go that route, and then the ones who don't go that route, who has been trying to fight, but there's a vice germ there. You see, this is something that our children, yes, we got to teach them their identity, but we got to teach them the truth of their identity. They need to know the truth of who they are and the truth of what they're dealing with so they can know how to maneuver in this world. Our children is destroyed by the lack of knowledge. We already was destroyed. Now they're being twice or three times that destroyed because we don't even teach them. Right now, the school system make it seem like slavery was servants, not really slavery. They don't even teach them that it was a crime. They teach them as if this was our role in existence. So we have to start talking to them about the truth so they can see their enemy.
Let me chime in because I really like what everyone is saying. Let me do this. Okay. This is a juicy conversation, and I think we're still on point, though. I think we're still on point with both Martin Luther King and suicide. One of the things that I wanted to bring into the conversation was that before integration, it is said that 70% of our homes, and this is backing up what you're saying, Dr. Melvin, that kind of right, that before integration, 70% of our homes was a man, a woman, a child. I mean, it was the full package, if you will. After integration, 70% of the homes now headed by, and 70% or more now headed by single-headed household, in most cases, the woman. And we all know that this is not by accident. This is not by accident. This is by design. And we all know that, certain laws, for instance, that if you lived in the projects, that you weren't allowed to have the man in the home, the father in the home. This is a government policy. And so the answer, I think, has to be that we separate ourselves from this toxic system. It's a toxic system, and that during segregation, we were faring better than we were during integration, so that if we poured our resources, would be much better.
We'll have to agree to disagree because I don't agree with that, and I'm not going to. So I agree that, again, full stop. Going, I think, as Dr. Swift said, going uphill with boulders on our back. That's real. That's not fictional. That's real. But we are resilient, and we are able to overcome the most atrocious situations because we're that strong. And I truly believe that. I also believe that we have the ability now to help folks who come from horrific socioeconomic conditions to see something else. One of the things I love saying to my patients is you can't unsee some things, bad things or good things. And once you see that there is a world outside of your small pond, you see the ocean. You fly on a plane for the first time. You understand that there are other people in the world who not only look like you, but can thrive and do great things. That's powerful,
Right.
powerful. And that's one way, one of the many steps that you have to take in order to achieve your wellness, to achieve that well-being, to combat that toxic culture and toxic environment that we're all talking about, that I think we all would agree fully exist. But I am not someone who thinks everything's got to be separated. I don't believe that.
So,
well, let me say, if I can,
yeah,
I'll
no
be
problem.
very,
And
very
we'll
brief.
just roundtable discussion. So you go ahead.
I'll be real short.
Oh,
And
you don't have
you
to
know,
be short.
Exactly.
I think one thing for sure, you know, you have to travel really out of the earth, and probably you'll find something else, some more there, in order to escape racism, right? Racism is in every corner of this world. We cannot, that's not something you can get on a plane and escape. It's there, it's present. But one thing for sure, to your point, was a point I wanted to make earlier, and thank you for bringing it back, Brother Muhammad. When left alone, if we are not under the oppression of our enemy, left alone, we have demonstrated. We started history, right? You can't go far back enough. There's us. Pyramids, everything that this world has, it extracted from. We are the original people, right? Extracted from us. But even dialing forward and looking at us here, existing here in the United States, when left alone, we had a Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? When left alone, Rosewood. When left alone, was that place in North Carolina? I was reading some about a year ago. There was a community there. What is it? I missed what you said.
Wilmington, North Carolina.
Is it Wilmington? Thriving.
And don't forget Central Park too.
I don't know about Central Park.
Yeah, if you get a chance, read about it. There was Central Park. There was a thriving Black community, and it's Central Park now.
Huh. Something to look into. So right. Bottom line, to just cut it short, if we are left alone, we flourish. God in us comes out. There's nothing we cannot do. The only reason why we are in the condition that we are in is because we are up against a wicked oppressor. That's it.
And go ahead, sister. I'm sorry. We keep on. You go right ahead.
No, go ahead if you want to.
I just wanted to say real quickly that, you know, I think the problem is that we need to I think the problem is that we are, as Black people right now, we're like that frog that's sitting in that water and the temperature is being turned up. We are resilient, but for how long? Because if you have Black women right now, which is the canary in the coal mine, if you have Black women who are dying in childbirth, and then you have Black children, this high maternity rate, that right there is a dangerous sign that this and Black women dying in childbirth is not poor Black women. This cuts across economic lines. So I think that is a canary in the coal mine that says that we are like freshwater fish that have been dropped into salt water and we can't breathe.
Nicole, take us home.
That is powerful. No, you said very wonderful things. And I have to agree that separation is the only way, because as it's taught in Dianetics therapy, we're not going to be able to move forward as long as we have something that is suppressing us from moving forward as a people. Because yes, we are resilient. Yes, we are strong, powerful Black gods that was created for struggle, but also to rise to the epitome of our existence. But we have not been able to do that because there's been something there that has been preventing us, literally is an enemy to us. Now we know that an enemy is somebody who pretty much is trying to take your life if they're an enemy. The problem is not that they know that we're enemies and they treat us like it. We don't know that they're an enemy. That's where the problem lies. See, once we start knowing who our enemies are, and once our children start knowing who, it's not just because you know an enemy don't mean you have to go right out there and start killing them, but you will stand strong. If they try to take your life, you're going to turn around and say, no, my life is important. Black lives does matter. And you're going to protect your life. You know what I'm saying? So we don't know our enemies. To this day, after everything that they do to us, they have made us not even know who they are. And it's not even the fact of them. It is the engrams that we carry in our mindset that creates a demonic circuit. That's demon circuits that it creates in our mindset that makes us think that our enemy's way of life is really our friends, is really okay. It creates what is called critical race theory, makes racism so normal across the board. It is so embedded in America that it is normal. And we have literally accepted it as being normal. So it's okay to go to a store and have a white person walk around and look at you. You're still going to buy there. It's okay if you see a Black woman get mistreated at a store and you're in line to order stuff. You're still going to stay there. Cops come get her. We've seen this on the videos. We've seen all of this stuff happen. We still don't do anything about it. That is not normal. You see, we're living in a world where, yes, we are resilient, but we're not living normal. It's not normal to see your own Black sister get beat down in a restaurant or in a nail shop, and then you just stand there and still stand in line to get some food. That's not normal. It is not normal to see your children get shot on the ground unarmed. That's not normal. So if it's not normal, we're not normal, but we're still living normal because we have given the control of our mindset to them to control it. And I think Minister Farrakhan says something like the person that directs your or controls your education.
Yeah, the diameter.
What is it? Direct
that gives you the diameter of your knowledge, gives you the circumference of your activity.
Of your activities. And that's what's going on right now. Yes, we are progressing in their world, but we're progressing at what they want us to do, how they want us to progress, not how we're meant by God to progress.
Well, hopefully we can all come away from this conversation going, there is a knowledge and independence that we all have to kind of strive to achieve and make sure is known within our community.
Yes. And let me, we'll go around as we close out. I'll go ahead and make the first one, and then we'll go around and we'll end with you, Dr. Melvin. So I think what we have to understand, number one, I just wanted to say that when we talk separation, we're not talking hate. We're not talking that we hate, that they'll hate the white man. That's wasted energy. What we're literally talking about is being intelligent and surviving. We need to survive now. We can't continue to survive under this oppressive system. So I just wanted to say that when we talk separation, it's not that we're saying that we're hate. Like I think it was Fred Hampton. He said, "White power for white people, black power for black people." So with that, I think that our children, as you all have said, they need to see a bright future. As Dr. Swift was saying, our children, they need to see hope. And I think at this point in time, with the Black Lives Matter movement and waking up as a child and seeing our people with the police officer with his foot literally killing a man, there's what other option do we have that at some point there's going to be an explosion, but I won't go on. So we'll go to you, Dr. Swift, and Sister Nicole, Dr. McClure, and Dr. Melvin.
What comes to mind to me is something that an Indian writer wrote, it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a severely sick world, something like that. And that's what comes to mind when I think about what we're trying to do. And I feel like that's the undertone of Dr. King's statement of integrating our people into a burning house. It's that we are trying to integrate with, we're trying to be like, we're trying to mimic, we're trying to meld into a severely sick society. And in so doing, we are becoming severely sick. The way of the European world is not our way. It's not our way. We have a different, as Dr. Dwayne talked about, we have a different epistemology, way of understanding and knowing things. We have a different axiology of where we value and how we relate to one another. We have a different worldview, a different way of seeing things logically.
That's right.
We are different people. And when we try to act other than who we are, we fail. We have to come back to our own and be ourselves. That's the only way we can survive. And if we have to separate to do that, then so be it.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Swift. Sister Nicole?
So what comes to mind to me is when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that torchlight, education is a torchlight to a civilization. And that is true. And that's where we fall at, because we have to ask the question, whose civilization are we living? Are we living our own civilization, or are we living the civilization of others? Because they have plans for us. I've always told my son that if you don't have a plan for yourself, someone else will. They have had plans for us since we've been here in America, and it has never been an equality level. Now, when we talk about separation, it ain't hate. It is separation for us to heal. It doesn't mean that it has to always be that way, but at least we will have parameters on how things will be conducted when we do come among and start integrating ourselves with other people. At least our children will be raised with the knowledge that they need to have to be equal, truly equal in this world. Because what they teach in the school system, I've been in it. It counts for nothing. Look at what our children are becoming when they get out of school. It's proven. So that's all I wanted to say.
All right. Dr. McClure?
I'll say that, so in this country, we've been enslaved longer than we've been free. But prior to enslavement, we were free longer than we were enslaved. Basically, we have a lot more history to into, and I believe that our culture has plenty of wealth. It has all the wealth that we need to solve these problems. All the cultural wealth. If you understood them as gold, diamonds, whatever it might be, that same gold and diamonds exists within our thinking and our ability to problem solve and find other ways of managing this place and space that we find ourselves in. I'm not sure exactly when it happens, but I try to work from a strength-based model of finding the deeper discourse that we need to have that's horizontal and shared amongst all of us. Past the politics and religion of the moment and ideologies of the moment. There's something deeper. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And Dr. Melvin, you're going to bring us on home?
Yeah,
that balance.
I really, really appreciate the rich discussion and dialogue that we had tonight. I think for our audience, it is always okay to have dissenting opinions and to have disagreement, but we can continue, as you've seen here, to be cordial and certainly be open to others' thoughts and others' conceptualizations. I really like the the thought Dr. McClure just left off with. We do have the ability to solve these problems, whatever way, ultimately, as a people, as a society, that we choose to solve it. We do have the tools to do that. We have the tools to see other things. We have the tools to understand not only our struggles, not only our history, but to understand that we do have purpose and we do have a way forward, even in this in this environment. I'll say it that way. And so I'm still hopeful about that, and I still think that for anyone out there struggling with how do you move forward, how do you cope with your illness, how do you get to a place of wellness, it can start with that support system, whether that is your family, whether that is your community, whether that is someone that's positive in your life. And it certainly starts with believing in yourself that there is a way forward, that it's not hopeless, that you're not worthless, that you're not helpless. I think that's the message that I want to make sure is delivered to our audience this evening.
Yes, sir. And so I knew Dr. Melvin would bring it home and encapsulate it all. And you're right, Dr. Melvin. I mean, this is a conversation that Black people need to have with each other. You know, it's not, you know, we shouldn't be afraid, as you were saying, to look at these different roads that we may want to think of traveling down uh, for our survival and for our children's well-being. I want to thank each and every one of you, and I want to thank you, Dr. McClure, for bringing on that excellent guest. I mean, when we talked about PTSD, I mean, we'll have hopefully some future shows, because that's so deep. And as I think it's Dr. Joyce DeGruy talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome. We also, as Black people, just suffer PTSD from walking around in America. So for those who are watching, we want to continue to invite you to watch us every month. We do this every third Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. We definitely invite you to call in. And if you want to be a part of the program, as far as coming on the program, then join our Facebook group. That's Knowledge Cypher, Knowledge. Knowledge Cypher Conference Series. Just type in Knowledge Cypher Conference Series and join that Facebook group. And in that group, you will have the link, and you can actually come on and join this conversation live, or you can call in, and we will put that number on the screen. So with that, I want to thank each and every one of you panelists for your excellent insight. I really enjoyed the conversation, even though for some of us radicals on this panel, but I really enjoyed the conversation, and I think that it's a healing process for us to come together as a family and to talk like this. So thank each and every one of you, and may God continue to bless you. And once again, I'm gonna try to do more than one thing at a time. So God bless you, and we will talk to each and every one of you here real soon, next month. God bless.
God bless.